Hey everyone, and welcome back to episode 3 of my Standardbred retraining series featuring Alfredo Dream. During the last episode, we practiced relaxing and standing quietly under saddle. As he got a little bit better at that, we were walking around a little bit more, and I would put my inside leg on to ask him to move away from it, and I realized he didn't really know that, so I decided to spend a session trying to teach him to step laterally off of my leg, kind of like a leg yield. So I found that a lot of Standardbreds want to, when they're turning, throw their inside shoulder in and point their nose to the outside so that they're counter bent and just kind of moving their shoulder rather than bending through their body to turn. So I think that the best way to counteract that is to teach them to move off of your inside leg and really push them to the outside as you're turning. So to start, I want to teach this concept from the ground. For Alfredo, I am just gonna bend him slightly in and then ask him to step away from my hand, and I'm putting it just behind the girth, right where I would have my leg if I was riding. And then I use a voice cue to ask him to step over. So far Fredo is not a huge fan of my treats, so I just train him with pressure and release. But I also made a video in the past that explains how I introduce leg yielding from the ground using positive reinforcement if you want a little bit more detail on the process. The concept here is exactly the same, but instead of rewarding with a treat, I reward by removing the pressure. So Fredo has excellent ground manners, and he very much understands the concept of yielding away from the pressure on the ground, and I really just don't have to spend all that long teaching him this. I'm just making sure that I really praise him when he does the right thing, but when he's doing it consistently, it's time for me to hop on board and try it out from the saddle. So same process as always when I get on, because he's still so green. I want to take the time to introduce things, and because I'm a fool, I tripped over my mounting block, which spooked him a little bit. And so now I'm doing my very best to recreate that sound to make sure that he wouldn't be scared by it if I do it again. And I hopped right up, and he did start to walk off right away, but I was able to correct him, and he stopped and stood very nicely, which I was really excited to see. Because it kind of shows that our lesson of stopping and standing quietly from the next ride really stuck and took place. So before I really do anything special for this ride, I will make sure I take some time to just walk around and give Alfredo a chance to warm up and acclimate to the arena a little bit. You can't see it, but just out of frame there is a chicken running around on the outside of my ring, and menacingly, if you ask Alfredo. He is not a spooky horse, but he was a little distracted by this chicken, so I want to give him a chance to warm up and also come to terms with the chicken before I start making any bigger demands of him. So once I feel I've given Alfredo a chance to get warmed up, both physically and mentally, and really focus on the job at hand, I'm going to start asking him the same things I asked on the ground. I'm going to ask him to walk forward, bend a little bit to the inside, and then move off of my inside leg. I had noticed in my prior rides that he could already sort of move off of my left leg, so I started out tracking left just to make things even easier for him. In this direction, I'm going to start out with this little bit of bend, just enough to see the inside of his eye, and then I'm going to put my leg on and ask him to step over. Tracking left, he seems to be having a hard time just with the initial bend, so to set him up for success, I'm going to ask him to do a smallish, like maybe 10-meter circle, where he really has almost no choice but to bend. And then when I come off the circle, I'm going to put my inside leg on and ask him to step out towards the rail. Here's a pro tip: if you're teaching your horse to leg yield, you always want to take a few steps off the rail and leg yield them out towards the rail, just because that is where they're going to be the most comfortable. So after I feel good about our leg yielding at the walk, tracking left, I'm going to change directions and ask the same thing. At the walk, tracking right, Alfredo was really pushing his shoulders in. I could tell he felt a little bit confused and frustrated with me, and just like we need to walk before we can trot, I can break this down even more for him, so I came to a halt and asked him to move off of my leg, more like a turn on the forehand. You can see he gets a little bit frustrated and unsure with me here. I'm really just asking for a turn on the forehand, and I'm not going to let him throw that inside shoulder in. I'm trying to be kind and understanding because I know he doesn't know what I want, but I'm also trying to be very clear about what my expectations are. Then when he finally does the right thing and steps out, I want to really praise him. So I drop all of the pressure, give him a big pat, and let him walk forward for a bit on the loose rein. Then I'll pick up my rein, reinforce what I just asked by asking him to halt again, and then once again, move off of the leg. Sweet Alfredo is just such a little trier, and now he's really getting it. He is really moving nicely off of the inside leg, so I'm just gonna do a few more laps at the walk here. But once he's got that down, I am going to bravely ask for a little bit of trot and see what he has to offer. Since my ring is so small and we're already really working on a circle, it's going to be really hard for him to stay balanced, and I don't think it's fair to insist that he stays bent the entire way, but I do want to keep him at least a little bit straighter. The trot is not very balanced and he's not able to hold it for very long, so I just wanted to see what he had. So after he trots, we're going to come back to the walk, practice some more leg yields to reinforce the bending and moving off of the legs, and then change direction. Before I ask for the trot tracking left, we're going to review leg yields at the walk in this direction and moving off of my left leg. Then when I feel he's ready, I will ask for a trot again. In this direction, he is so much more balanced, and he's actually able to hold the trot for quite a while longer while also staying straighter. He still doesn't have the true bend that I eventually want, but that will come with some time, patience, and strength. I should note that I put hoof boots on Fredo for the very first time before this ride. My ring is just kind of hard and rocky right now, so I wanted to give his feet a little bit of extra cushion, but he's not used to my hoof boots, and he had a pretty big stumble during this downward transition to a walk. Fortunately, I was sitting with my shoulders back and he was able to recover without much fuss. It was a good reminder to always sit with my shoulders back. In the ride, we walked around, did some final reinforcement of the leg yielding at the walk. Then I did a little callback to our last session and asked Alfredo to stop and stand nicely and just chill there for a bit. He was pretty relaxed, even though my chickens were still looming menacingly outside of the ring. And then I walked him into the center of the ring and asked him to step over the poles on the ground as one final challenge for the day. So he crossed those with no problem, and I felt between that and also the relaxation, despite my scary chickens, was a good sign for taking him outside of the ring for the very first time. So be sure to come back for our next episode where I take Fredo on his first hack around the property. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to continue following along with Fredo on his journey from racehorse to riding horse, or if you just want to follow along with any of my other retired racehorses, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.